What I'm going to do in this class is use the lessons of history to apply to your daily life. That's what I love about history. It can really give you
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You just can't take what this guy has to say at face value. It's either Joe Biden is lying or Joe Biden is so completely out of his depth. There's two possible scenarios when it comes to Joe and all of the promises and all of the ambitious statements that he makes. It's either he's flat out lying or he's just so absolutely unqualified to be speaking or making these claims in the first place. You sprinkle a little bit of time in the equation and let's just say his statements don't age very well now, do they? And that's the topic for today's video. 4 years of Donald Trump, 4 years of monumental historic gains when it comes to foreign policy. Whether it's economic foreign policy, dealing with the EU, Mexico, Canada, China, dealing with the UN and NATO, or dealing with threats in the Middle East and threats with North Korea, it was historic win after historic win over and over again. The man had a goal, the man accomplished them, at least mostly. Joe Biden is the exact opposite, making grandiose claims which sound good on paper, but the guy can just never ever deliver. Just about a month or two ago was all out chaos between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And now, you might not know this, but the Taliban are expanding in the Middle East. And not only are the Taliban expanding, but things are getting very tense between American forces and terrorist entities within the Middle East. It seems as though Joe Biden is completely in over his head and things are spiraling into complete chaos under establishment leadership, exactly what you might have expected. So let me update you guys on what's going on, and then let's just cover the latest blunders and ridiculous statements coming out of Joe's mouth. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so who remembers? Donald Trump secured a peace treaty with the Taliban contingent on removing troops at the start of May. The Taliban had explicitly stated that if anything wasn't respected in that deal, there would be major issues. Joe Biden gets into office and immediately changes the deal, pushing it from May to now September 11th, the anniversary of 9/11. At the time, it seemed like a ridiculously dumb thing to do, frankly, almost as if he was trying to stir something up. But of course, Joe Biden took victory laps. Even though the deal was brokered by Donald Trump's administration, Joe Biden came out and took credit for the job and even said this.
I've concluded that it's time to end America's longest war. It's time for American troops to come home. The United States will begin our final withdrawal, begin it on May 1 of this year.
Essentially, Biden trying to take credit for ending the Afghanistan war, or the forever war within the Middle East. If we backtrack just a little bit, go into the time machine, Biden also said in 2012, Biden on Afghanistan, we are leaving in 2014, period. It seems as though he's been making this promise for a very long time, but never actually living up to it. Turns out things are getting real messy to say the least. Taliban taking back territory as Australian and US forces prepare to leave Afghanistan by September. As foreign forces scale down their presence in Afghanistan, Taliban insurgents have been gaining ground in a string of military advances across the country. Afghanistan has been a patchwork of various control centers since the US-led forces ousted the Taliban from power in 2001, following the September 11th terrorist attack on the US, and established a new government based in Kabul, where over the last 4 years, their power has largely receded. Just over the last couple of months, we're now getting this reported: 40 districts in 45 days. Taliban sources told the ABC the group had captured nearly 40 Afghan districts in the past 45 days, amounting to approximately 10% of Afghanistan. And so things are getting pretty murky, I'd say, under Joe Biden's leadership. Now we also have this. US airstrikes target Iranian-backed terrorist group near Iraq-Syria border. The US launched airstrikes late Sunday night against Iranian-backed terrorists near the Iraq-Syria border. The defensive precision airstrikes against 3 facilities were in response to the terrorist group's repeated use of drones against US forces in Iraq. And then of course, in response, militias fire rockets at US forces in Syria following airstrikes. A tit for tat back and forth. There's only really one word to describe this: an escalation of war, an escalation of battle in the area. Who thinks that it's just a coincidence, as pro-war Biden, the guy who literally lobbied in the Senate to start this war in the first place, and who has been promising to end it for literally over a decade at this point, with no actual results ever materializing? Is it just a surprise that as Joe Biden gets back into office, drone strikes are up again, the Middle East is seemingly plunging into chaos, and explosive strikes back and forth are all of a sudden out of nowhere, escalating beyond most of what we saw over the last 4 years? I'd like to think that it's not a coincidence, but rather exactly what was expected in the first place. This is what happens when you vote for an establishment politician. This This is what lefties voted for. They voted for the war machine. They voted for warmongers who've been unleashing cries in the media for years, pretending to be the anti-war element of government. But then the moment Donald Trump got in office, they all got revealed for exactly what they are every single time. Donald Trump made a pledge to actually end the war and do something substantive to get Americans out of the Middle East. All of a sudden, it's funny how CNN and all these Democrat politicians turned into warmongers. Then once they attained power over the federal government, all of a sudden, it seems as though we're building up to a point where increased troop presence and increased military action within the area is most likely going to be lobbied over the next couple of years. Joe Biden is just a flat-out liar. You elected him thinking you were getting one thing, but you got another. And now, all of a sudden, Joe's pretending to be a man of the working class and of the blue-collar voter, of course delivered in his traditionally creepy style, almost as if he's the Joker, claiming he's going to make life cheaper and reduce taxes for the middle class.
Hey guys, I think it's time to give ordinary people a tax break. The wealthy are doing fine. I mean it. I mean it. Why is this not a tax break for working folks when the stuff we give to the super wealthy are called tax breaks?
And so he told you he was going to cancel student debt, he didn't. And so he told you he was going to end the war, he didn't. He told you he wasn't anti-energy and wouldn't go after the energy sector in America, he did. And now he's telling you he's not going to increase your taxes, well, I'm telling you he will. First off, as this Twitter user puts it so eloquently, working people already got a huge tax break via the Trump tax plan, go read it, doubling the automatic deduction to $24K so you get your first $24K in income tax-free, double child tax credit to $2K per child, and lower tax brackets all across the board. Joe Biden, as we know now, officially is letting that expire. But even beyond that, Joe claims here once again that if you're making over $400K a year, you're going to pay more in taxes, but people under won't. But listen to what he says at the end.
And critically, we're going to get it all done without raising taxes on a single American earning less than $400,000. Now, all of you making over $400,000, I love you. But I don't mind a little bit if your taxes go up a little. But all kidding aside, I made a commitment. I would not support anything that raised a penny in tax on someone making under 400 grand. And that means in this bill, there is no gas tax. Working families have already paid enough.
Well, Joe might not explicitly increase your taxes, although most likely they'll find a way to do it. He claims that there's not going to be a gas tax. No gas tax, you say? Nobody's speaking about the elephant in the room, the true hidden tax that's hitting who harder than ever, the lower and
这是什么？日本原装进口的小白豆，但它这里面就有2到3%的传明。
middle class. The hidden tax of inflation, it's right in front of you. Just take a look at this right over here. Look at these gas prices, friends. Gas prices hit a 7-year high as stations run low on fuel ahead of July 4th. Democrat attack on industry and the draconian restrictions and attacks on industry from the COVID pandemic have caused so many issues within supply chains that now you are going to have to pay. Joe Biden planning to increase corporate taxes and taxing the highest earners. What do you think that's going to do? It's going to make everything more expensive as companies have to change their prices to adjust to a new bottom line, and who's going to pay for it? You. That's the hidden tax. The Fed's endlessly printing money. Joe Biden's mega trillion-dollar spending deals, spending money that the country just doesn't have in the tax coffers. Who's going to pay for it? You will. And so how many times is this guy going to lie to you? And as a Democrat, you're just going to keep voting for it. He pretends to care about minority communities, hasn't done a thing. He pandered towards left-wing activists and younger voters, and reneged on nearly every single promise that he made when endorsing the Biden-Bernie platform. He's been claiming forever he's going to end the forever wars, yet things just seem to be getting worse and worse and worse. He's claiming you're not going to have to pay more, and he's going to take off the financial burden on the middle class, but the middle class is just not feeling it, quite the opposite. And so how many times will you be lied to until you realize you're being played? Oh, actually, wait a second. I just stated that Joe Biden has been pandering to minority voters, but hasn't delivered, hasn't done anything. Not a single piece of real legislation and concrete action. Well, I guess that might have been wrong, as the Biden White House just announced 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations are needed for rural and disadvantaged communities. So apparently, they're gonna fix poverty within the inner city with, electric vehicle charging centers. Okay, I've heard it all, folks. This administration is completely in over its head, and at this point, you just can't believe a single word released by the 46th administration, now can you? It's just been pandering and lies, appealing towards people's sensibilities and emotion, but no actual substance whatsoever. The exact opposite, literally in so many different ways. From the previous administration that maybe was a little bit rough on the edges, but at least they didn't lie to you on a near constant basis. They said they were going to do something, and then they did it. A far cry from what we're seeing now. That's what I got for you guys on this one, though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe. I gotta get back to work, though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. At this point, we gotta coin a phrase, folks. Only in California, and more specifically, only in Oakland, California. We just covered the story last week of failed California Governor Gavin Newsom, the man in charge of the failed state of California, the man who's overseen a drastic increase in homelessness in his state, poverty in general, walking around the streets of Oakland getting attacked, assaulted by a homeless man. Almost poetic in its karmic nature. And so you thought that one was funny, you thought that one was bad. Well, what are the odds that literally a week later, essentially the exact same type of thing except different context, happened in the exact same city of Oakland in California? It's a failed state, folks, as crime and poverty is rising, shooting through the roof at unprecedented levels like you haven't seen since the 1990s. Failed California Democrat leaders are getting a taste of their own medicine, so to speak, getting a feel of what it's actually like to be a citizen of the cities they rule, as Oakland's chief of violence prevention had an encounter with armed robbers on the street during a news segment. You can't make this stuff up, you can't write it. Gavin Newsom at the core of a homelessness crisis and poverty crisis in California, getting assaulted by a homeless person on the streets of Oakland. Then the chief of violence prevention, as crime is skyrocketing, is the victim of an armed robbery during a newscast on the streets. Folks, California is a complete cesspool, and I got some interesting things to show you. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so just take a look at this headline. Armed robbers held up news crew as it interviewed Oakland's chief of violence prevention. You have got to be kidding me. Two armed robbers held up a television news crew that was interviewing Oakland's director of violence prevention outside City Hall on Monday afternoon, just hours after the police chief warned of worsening crime amid cuts to police budget. Oakland police reported that the two suspects approached the newscasters at 3:09 p.m. and tried to steal a camera. After a scuffle, a security officer pulled out a gun and ordered the suspects to leave. They fled without the camera. No injuries were reported. A statement from the police department described the incident but did not identify Guillermo Cespedes, head of the city's Department of Violence Prevention, as a victim. Cespedes told the Chronicle that he was at the scene of an attempted robbery on Monday, and a police watch commander confirmed he was being interviewed when the crime occurred. Our colleagues were conducting an interview at the Oakland City Hall when they were approached by two armed individuals. Lisa Catalan, a spokesperson of NBC Bay Area, said, "Thankfully, our colleagues are safe and unharmed." Democrats are in denial, folks. You gotta be in total denial to have it hit you in the face and to still not admit that the policies you've enacted, that your cuts to police budgets and the enabling of street justice and street violence, the enabling of political violence, is not at the core of this epidemic of crime that we've seen across the country. You gotta just be lying to yourself. But worst of all, lying to the actual people. What makes this situation extra frustrating is it happened directly after the Oakland police chief was warning about this exact thing right here. Oakland police chief delivers emotional rebuke of city's defund campaign. Those, quote, speed bumps are 65 lives lost so far this year. Oakland police chief Lerone Armstrong on Monday delivered an impassioned rebuke of the city council's recent decision to further defund law enforcement in the city, arguing fewer officers on the streets will only result in more crime and more lives lost. The council voted last week to redirect $18 million from the police budget to community violence prevention programs, despite repeated pleas from Armstrong and even the city's liberal mayor, Libby Schaaf, Democrat, the San Francisco Chronicle reported. The council's decision comes even as a wave of violence continues to rock Oakland, highlighted by another 4 homicides in just the last few days. On July 1st, is the city going to be safer than it is today? Armstrong questioned during the news conference, pointing out that violent crime is on the rise across the board. "We find ourselves in crisis," he said. "We find ourselves reeling from a weekend of violence where we have seen 4 homicides over a 3-day period. Our shootings are up over 70% compared to last year. Our robberies up 11% this year. There have been 1,300 robberies in this city already this year. Our carjackings are up nearly 88%, so we clearly see that crime is out of control in the city of Oakland, and our response was for less police resources," he continued, explaining that the forthcoming budget cuts will have an immediate negative effect. "We already have a rough time responding to the high numbers of calls that we get. This will make it tougher tougher, he argued, adding later, our department is not growing, it's shrinking. Later during the news conference, Armstrong eloquently put into perspective the effects that a decreased police presence has had and will have on the city. He noted that during the budget meetings, one city council member acknowledged that as the city adapted to the new way of policing, it may encounter speed bumps or challenges along the way. For me, those, quote, speed bumps are 65 so far this year, 65 lives lost, Armstrong said, referring to the dozens of lives lost to homicides. These crimes are not speed bumps, they're people. The police chief recalled arriving at the scene of a recent shooting in the city in which a man's life was taken. While there, he said a woman confronted him, charging him to do something about it. Armstrong paused to gather his emotions before acknowledging, without the resources, it makes it challenging to make Oakland safe. Incredibly, not long after the chief aired his grievances, reports surfaced alleging that armed robbers had held up a news crew attempting to interview the city's chief of violence prevention. And so it all comes full circle now, doesn't it? They're not only lying to themselves, they're lying to you. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like the Democrat elitist that she truly is, recently told people to stop with the hysteria, stop being hysterical when it comes to violent crime in the neighborhood that you inhabit. Who is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez speaking to exactly when she says something like that? She's speaking to the actual residents of Oakland themselves, New York City, Democrat areas in general, experiencing a massive surge, a rise in crime, where largely these people vote Democrat. And what are they getting for it? They're getting Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez looking down at them and telling them to stop the hysteria. Who loses at the end of the day? Is it Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who continues to increase in fame and get millions of views and retweets on all of her tweets every single day? Or the individuals who inhabit these neighborhoods and don't want to see their police departments defunded? I mean, just check this out. Voters on the streets of Oakland telling you how they feel.
Many people complain there aren't enough officers.
We need more police in Oakland.
So often people broken in to the cars, homes. So no, I disagree with defunding the police.
Many people say they're fed up with the gun violence.
I understand why people want to defund the police. They think the police are violent, but who's going to save us when we need to call them?
A lot of people just do not feel safe because we need police, and the community need to work with the police in order to help curb some of this violence.
And so my question to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, those legitimate concerns from exactly that, concerned citizens and voters.
We live in strange times. The housing bubble burst, rise of China, and the rise of inequality. Health is a very big deal. Taxes are a front-rank issue. Blue-collar jobs were lost. Two groups have been left behind, but it's a complicated story. Instead of saying, it's a complicated world, I don't get it, say, all right, let me try to figure this out. Let me make sense of this. Doing economics requires stepping back from all of the details to say, what is the essential here? What is the story? It's about people. It's not about money. And it ends up being about what people do. Really good economics has a kind of beauty to it. And it comes down to just two principles. $100 bills don't lie on the street very long. The other is every sale is also a purchase. Things add up. What you're going to learn here in this class is how to think like an economist. Healthcare in America is an economic issue.
Most likely Democrat voters. Is that the hysteria that you're talking about? I mean, talk about disgusting rhetoric. You know, I always use the word callous, but it's just a complete lack of compassion for the actual people you're supposed to represent. Not a care in the world for the actual constituents that put you in office. It's what we see with Democrats each and every single time. Well, Democrats and rhinos. Rhinos do the exact same thing. These type of politicians that promise one thing, do another, or don't take in the actual voters' input when making decisions and do whatever they want based on establishment needs or personal political gain or ideological reasons. People wonder why Donald Trump and more Trumpism-style candidates are so popular. It's because they don't do this. They actually represent the needs and the wants, the policies that their constituents actually want enacted in government, while these far-left Democrats operate from a level of self-righteousness that's just so beyond the pale, so out of control, their constituents are literally pleading with them, please don't defund the police, stop demonizing the police, we need them, we're scared to let our children out on the streets. but the callous Democrats just don't care and do it anyways. Another $18 million removed from police departments in the city of Oakland as they're seeing astronomical skyrocketing in crime. And what do you think's gonna happen? The actual community will be more vulnerable and more victimized than ever before. But that's what I got for you guys in this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. Of course, we're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. What do Democrats hate the most? Democrats probably hate the facts, hate being confronted with reality more so than anything else. They want to live in their alternate reality. They want to live in a fantasy, blind from all the trauma and chaos and discord that they've created. And speaking of Democrats and all the descriptive terms that I just used, what's the first city that comes to mind? Well, there's three that probably come to mind. You got New York, Los Angeles, and of course, Chicago. But let's focus specifically on Chicago this one, because that is the crime capital of North America. That is a city mired in dysfunction, violence, poverty, and it's been ran by incompetent Democrats for decades. Has anything changed in the modern day? Absolutely not. Mayor Lori Lightfoot is keeping that tradition going strong with a complete refusal to take accountability, responsibility for the disorder and violence in her city. And whenever she's questioned about it, she snaps, which is exactly what just happened. This is why Mayor Lori Lightfoot is very typical in her Democrat practices, very carefully only interacting with certain reporters who will push her narrative. Just like Joe Biden, they all have a list of reporters that they like to question, but when someone that they don't know or from a different political persuasion asks them the hard-hitting questions, well, it generally ends in a dumpster fire like I'll just show you. But before we get into the video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so first, let's prove the concept that I just spoke about. Joe Biden is always talking about how he's gonna get in trouble if he doesn't call on the pre-approved list of reporters that he's supposed to be interacting with.
I'm sorry, I'm going to get in trouble with staff if I don't do this the right way. Jennifer Jacobs, Bloomberg.
Well, it seems as though this is just the practice of Democrats that are facing scrutiny in general. Mayor Lori Lightfoot being questioned by a Newsmax reporter, and just look at the start of their little interaction.
Mayor Lightfoot, what I think...
Introduce yourself, sir?
Yes.
I don't think I'm familiar with you.
William Kelly, I'm with Newsmax.
Once again, the same metaphor comes to mind. Democrats looking like a deer caught in the headlights. Every single time it's a reporter that they're not specifically used to calling on, they automatically think it's a trap. Democrat leaders need to understand that answering hard questions is not a trap. It's called doing your job. It's called addressing concerns. But once again, just check out this interaction. You'll see just how disingenuous Mayor Lori Lightfoot is when questioned about crime.
Is the reason why the hotels are empty, the reason why the storefronts are closed, is because of fear of violent crime.
No,
there was, well...
Sir, okay. So,
white reporter in the house.
So, you know what? That's not appropriate, sir. If you look around you, sir, you're surrounded by white reporters. So I really ask you to
Do you feel
hold on,
responsible?
Sir. Let me answer the question that you've already asked. So I don't know where you're from. I know what magazine you're from, and I know what your conservative viewpoints are. But on almost every question that you ask, you had the facts wrong. So here's what I will say in answer to about the 15 questions that you just asked. No one thinks that a single act of violence is ever acceptable, least of all me. The hotels are where they are here in Chicago, as they are across the country, because of economic shutdown related to COVID-19. So that the premise of your very first question is fundamentally flawed and wrong. And you can have your opinion on it, but I got the facts.
Folks, 27 people were shot Friday into Saturday night across Mayor Lori Lightfoot's Chicago, and that's probably on the lower end. I'm always filling you guys in on these headlines. Every single weekend is murderous in Chicago, she said specifically. She's talking about tourism on weekends.
The actual facts, sir, what you're going to find is that on our weekends, when people are engaging in leisure travel, our hotels are seeing unprecedented levels of occupancy.
What about all the people that are dying every weekend? Not a care in the world. She would rather obfuscate, she would rather deny reality, she would rather claim that it's a disingenuous question than actually address the hard-hitting truth of violence in her city. She even had the audacity to go this far and claim that crime is on the downhill in Chicago.
Which you also didn't point out, but I will, so we get this straight, is that we're actually seeing a decline in homicides and shootings. Yes, sir. Sir. Okay.
Folks, you gotta be kidding me. Democrats just say things and they don't even care about the facts. She's fact-checking the Newsmax reporter with an outright lie, a totally disingenuous claim. We've got this right over here from the Chicago Tribune. In Chicago, 294 people have been killed this year. That is 21 more than 2020. 2020 was the worst year on record since 2016, with 273 people shot. You know, it's kind of funny because in that interaction that she was having with the Newsmax journalist, she claimed that all of these issues just spur from the COVID pandemic. But in 2016 and 2017, about halfway through the year, there was 290 homicides each year. 2020 wasn't as bad as those years, but there wasn't a pandemic during that time, now was there? In 2021, it's now the worst year on record since 2013, and probably way beyond that if I actually looked into the data, meaning homicides are up this year from the high that they were at last year during the COVID pandemic. And she seriously has the audacity to say that crime is on a downtrend? You gotta be kidding me. But also, if we take the data and we don't look at the numbers from a 6-month period, we look at the full year analytics. Last year was the deadliest year since 2016 and it was basically on par. 2017 slowed down. 2021 is looking like it might even potentially break 800 homicides for the whole year. It's on a literal uptrend. I mean, you can see it in the graph itself. It looks like it's going up in terms of its momentum. If you were investing in homicide stocks in the city of Chicago, I mean, you'd be banking out. It'd be the next meme stock. And this whole conversation all started about tourism. Hotels are struggling, the economy is opening back up, and Democrats want to make the whole conversation just about the pandemic. The Newsmax reporter, rightly so, at least in my opinion, is trying to shift the conversation into one of the most important aspects out there. People don't want to go to Chicago because of the violence. Just on a quick Google search, you just search the word Chicago tourism. Scroll a little bit down. The first question when it says people also ask, meaning what's the top search result when people are looking into Chicago tourism is Chicago safe for tourists? People do not feel safe. I personally have absolutely no interest in ever going to Chicago, regardless of the fact that it's one of America's great cities. It's just scuffed. I don't want to be there. And even looking at the numbers and the headlines in New York City, I don't really want to go there either. And I've had the same conversation with a ton of people that I know, and they all feel the exact same way. It's just straight up sketchy. And that's a serious problem when it comes to tourism. And it's the exact same type of problem that Mexico has when it comes to tourism. Back in the early 2000s, me and my family used to go to Mexico all the time. Nowadays, not so much. To ignore this reality and pretend like it doesn't exist and all is well, all is peachy, and to essentially enable the violence, the gang violence, the shootings, leading to absolutely catastrophic loss of life due to homicide. I mean, it's a war zone if you look at the numbers. In such a small city in terms of surface area, to be on pace for 800 homicides for the year is absolutely incredible. And we haven't even seen the worst. Generally, homicides and crimes spike up during the winter seasons, but the callousness and the disregard that we see from Democrats on a near constant basis when it comes to crime, the enabling of crime, the pretending as if it doesn't happen, see no evil, seems to be their motto, is getting nauseating, not just for Republicans, but for Democrats as well. Once again, the Democrat Chicago alderman comes out and absolutely slams Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot for her abysmal interaction with the Newsmax reporter, essentially debunking her. Check this out.
Well, I think it's clear that the mayor's reality is very much different from the reality of the people of the city of Chicago. And as you said, Rob, anyone with a computer can go on the city's very own dashboard and see that we've had more murders than we did year to date, 2021 to 2020, more shootings year to date. And yes, our hotels were impacted by COVID, but they're not seeing record numbers of people rushing back. They're still struggling. And we also know that the national reputation of Chicago is that we are the murder capital of the United States. The perception is that crime is out of control in this city. You cannot move forward with this concept of defunding the police and expecting someone else to pick up the phone call when you dial 911. It is simply not a reality that works, and they're trying to walk backwards from it. But the people, the everyday residents, see a city that is scrambling to get its act together.
Right.
Our residents want to see us turn that around, and they feel very disillusioned because the great reformer that they bought into has turned out to be quite a tyrant instead.
He said specifically, I don't know where you're from. And Raymond Lopez is absolutely right. When you are the leader, when you are the mayor of a city, that's where the buck stops. If the ship goes down, you go down with the ship. This is something that Democrats don't seem to understand. They don't take responsibility for the results under their leadership. It's a disservice to the American people, and Mayor Lori Lightfoot should be held accountable as Chicago continues to fail under her leadership, or lack thereof. It's been decades of failed leadership in the city of Chicago, yet they continue to elect do-nothing Democrats, bureaucrats, who don't even seem to care about the loss of life in their city. The affliction of vote blue no matter who is the true pandemic. That's what I got for you. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as you can. I gotta get back to work. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. It's just not a good look, folks. It's just not a good look. You know, why is it that on January 6th, the general consensus from all right-wingers, all the commentators on YouTube, all the networks, was essentially not to expect any type of violence or craziness to happen on January 6th? Well, the reason that is because for the most part, almost entirely, probably 99% plus of Republicans who assemble in protest or in any form of activism on the streets in general, it's almost entirely peaceful. It's just a party of folks taking advantage of their God-given right and their First Amendment right to have their voices heard. Yet all the time, Republicans are demonized as being vile, hateful, and an angry mob. But then why is it that every single time lefties get together, regardless of the cause, they end up looking like a bunch of hypocrites? We've gone over the hypocrisy of climate marches and women's marches getting together in Washington, D.C. or New York or other areas. Left-wing activists and protesters nearly always leave the place worse off than when they found it. And in some cases, it's so absolutely filthy, disgusting. You'd think it's a post-apocalyptic Hollywood scene. Why is it that when supposed anti-racists fill the streets to assemble in protest, they end up assaulting people, going after business owners, minority-owned business, pulling people out of cars and assaulting them? Well, it's because they're massive hypocrites. Let me show you guys a couple examples that are very recent. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so the peaceful, inclusive left are at it again. Pride marches and pride events across the country didn't exactly go as planned, as once again, as left-wingers get together out on the streets, it seems as though there's always one common denominator, and that denominator is total anarchy. Rioters at New York City Pride event assaulted a food cart operator. He, in the neon green shirt, was left bloodied on the ground. Now I can't show you guys what happened, of course, welcome to this platform, but maybe we could play just the ending part when the police officers come in to shield the man from the crowd.
Oh my God, you don't gotta have the flashlight on. You don't have to have the flashlight on. You don't have to have the flashlight on.
Ah, the inclusive, tolerant, non-violent, non-fascist left. Don't you love them? Across the country, we've seen nothing but chaos, riots. One individual, who was apparently part of the community itself, ramming his car and ending the lives of a couple people attending a march. Those are the headlines that have dominated the news cycle. That, and charging white people an entry fee as some sort of claim of pseudo-reparations. It's the same trend over and over and over again. When lefties come together, it's mass destruction and it leads to literal loss of life, literal death. And not only that, they're always the same people who are voting for environmental causes, lecturing you about carbon emissions and plastic in the ocean. Well, let's take a look at how a New York City park was left after a pride event in Manhattan. It's just so absolutely disgusting. But it's not surprising because this is the exact same thing that we see all the time. I always make the same contrast. Remember that massive Tea Party protest back in Washington, D.C.? This is right-wingers during the Tea Party movement in the tens of thousands all coming together. This is what the landscape looked like after they left. It was pristine. Democrats and lefties come together for their activist causes and litter plastic all over the ground without a care in the world. I mean, why would they care? They're people who have ran away from responsibility their entire lives. And so don't worry, the city, the government is gonna take care of it. They're gonna get UBI, free school, free education, free healthcare, a free car, a free house. They could throw things on the ground and don't worry, the city's gonna spend millions millions of dollars cleaning it up. That's literally what it costs each and every time you do this. And it just shows a level of entitlement. The elitist lefties who have never been held accountable for their actions ever a day in their life. People who are part of an elite class who talk a big game when it comes to social justice and environmentalism, but don't live up to the standard that they set for everybody else. Let's go in a time machine and show that it's not just a one-off, it's pretty much every single time. We got this piece right here from the Daily Mail from 2014. So much for cleaning up the planet. Climate change protesters who marched through Manhattan are branded hypocrites for leaving litter strewn across the city. Just take a look at some of these pictures. The Arctic affects us all. From Greenpeace, left on top of a mailbox with a plastic straw sticking out of it. And just take a look at the filth in some of these pictures. It's disgusting. And it's the same thing that we see over and over and over again. There's the famous picture right over here, which was associated with the left-wing Extinction Rebellion in Australia, which The Guardian claims Climate Strike's hoax photo accusing Australian protesters of leaving rubbish behind goes viral. It's a hoax photo because there was two events. One was Extinction Rebellion, the other was a cannabis event, and that was just the cannabis people. I'm sure the cannabis people have absolutely nothing to do with Extinction Rebellion. Those two events weren't connected whatsoever. From political views and environmental activism, of course not. I mean, you gotta be an absolute fool to believe this quote. Fact check. This is what the protest grounds look like every single time there's a left-wing protest. Every single time there's rubbish all over the ground. The same thing with the Women's March in DC. Nearly every single year, those pink hats littered across the floor with plastic garbage all over the place. And people wonder why no one takes left-wing activism on the street seriously. I mean, let's be real here. It's a bunch of smelly hippies who haven't had a productive day of their lives on this planet, and they prove themselves to be massive hypocrites each and every single time. But the trend continues, folks. The common denominator of total chaos. Juneteenth celebrations marred by gun violence that killed 7 people and injured 21. Days after President Joe Biden signed a bill recognizing Juneteenth as a federal holiday, the country recorded a spate of gun violence across different states during its celebration over the weekend. Violent incidents related to Juneteenth were reported in California, South Carolina, Michigan, Colorado, Louisiana, Philadelphia, recorded unrelated incidents of shooting. In all, at least 7 people were killed and 21 injured in gun violence over the weekend. But of course, we can't have the conversation about the obvious elephant in the room, that leftism and leftist activism always leads to a complete loss of control and anarchy. And the news coverage, of course, is absolutely despicable as well. During the early days of the truth pandemic, how dare Donald Trump go to a state that allows people to gather and have a super spreader event, a campaign event? How dare he? Meanwhile, protests were going on across the country and they were hailed as heroes. Riots destroying property, destroying people. I mean, let's just use one picture to sort of create imagery. Absolute total chaos, total destruction. And it was okay. Not only was the violence not condemned, but it definitely wasn't a super spreader event. 2 Republicans shake hands on the street, and oh, the horror. Joe Biden gets elected president of the United States, the same thing. It's all allowed as they simultaneously condemn the other side. Meanwhile, there was just a protest in London against draconian lockdown measures, and I mean, just take a look at the size, the magnitude. And I cannot find a single image showing property destruction, showing mass littering, or any of the stuff that we see associated with left-wing protests. But we're supposed to believe that those are the extremists, those are the irresponsible, terrible people, and you know what? I'm just not buying it. As my UK friends would say, what a load of bollocks. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. Of course, we're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm. We're hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I wanna thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. I really only have one thing to say, and it's not even a word, it's more of a reaction. What I want to say right now is What did you think was gonna happen? Democrats are seething on Twitter, seething with rage, partisan-filled rage, as once again, they were led astray by the Democrat establishment. They actually thought Donald Trump was gonna go to jail. How many times have we seen? Oh, we definitely got him this time. Coming from the Democrats, the walls are closing in. Donald Trump's time is limited in the White House. He's gonna be impeached. They're gonna drag him out of the White House in handcuffs, throw him in a cell and lock away the key. How many times have we heard that? And then, of course, Donald Trump gets completely exonerated. But the Democrats keep falling for it. The next one. Oh, we're gonna get him next. Oh, this time Donald Trump's going to jail for real. The man's not even in office anymore. It's been failed attempt after failed attempt after failed attempt, and they still are advocating for a politically partisan legal system to jail their political opponent, the Republican juggernaut that is Donald Trump. It is craziness, folks. And now, of course, we all know, we've been covering it. New York prosecutors are looking into the Trump administration after the second failed impeachment attempt. The Democrats said, we didn't get him here, but we're gonna go after him on the state level. It's exactly what they're doing. Every single liberal outlet a couple days ago was announcing that a New York City prosecutor was definitely gonna announce charges against the Trump administration. And of course, Donald Trump in the next couple days, well, let's just say, that didn't age well now, did it? And Democrats are not so happy about it. Let's get into it, folks. And then let's talk about the Democrats' worst nightmare, which is actually connected to why they're continuously going after him like they are, him and Ron DeSantis, because he's of course a political threat, and they're scared. They'd rather him in jail than him BTFOing them in 2022 and beyond. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so here's the initial reporting for some context. Trump Organization to be hit with criminal charges next week by crooked Manhattan DA C.Y. Vance. The case is tied to tax-related conduct amid claims Trump Organization employees illegally received tax-free perks such as apartments and car leases, according to NBC News. These types of cases are almost never pursued, but the witch hunt of Trump and everyone connected to him never ends. It looks like they're going to come with charges against the company. That is completely outrageous. Ron Fischetti, an attorney for the Trumps, said after the development was first reported by the New York Times. I've been practicing for over 50 years and I've never seen a case like this. Fischetti said that the corporation will plead not guilty and will make an immediate motion to dismiss the case against the corporation. And so clearly, it's the age-old saying from the Soviet Union, show me a man and I'll show you his crimes. Lefties, of course, getting super excited. CNBC reporting Trump lawyers warned by Manhattan DA of possible criminal charges against Trump Organization and CFO Alan Weiselberg. New York prosecutors reportedly give Trump Organization a Monday deadline for final arguments. And so today is Monday. What Democrats were hoping for, of course, was Donald Trump being pulled out of Mar-a-Lago or Trump Tower in New York in handcuffs, headed to jail. But what did the Democrats get? Breaking 911 just in. Manhattan DA will not criminally charge Donald Trump. Politico. I swear to God, it's Groundhog Day, folks. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And of course,
Have you ever wondered what happens when you pour salt into a cabbage? The N remedy not only helps you balance the gut flora, this is our first line of defense against toxins and harmful bacteria. It also acts as a
cope continues. Let's check out some of these responses. Yeah, that's the key word. In the first indictment, meaning more than one. They just said when this first indictment comes down, he won't be charged, Ron Fischetti told Politico. But he added that the DA's office said its investigation is ongoing, meaning the former president may not be out of hot water just yet. They're still coping over and over and over again. They're met with clear failure on this exact issue, but they're already inhaling a copious amount of copium. It's just the first indictment, folks. There's another one coming. We'll definitely get him on the next one. They won't, and if they do, it'll be BS in the first place. But of course, if they don't get him on the second one, oh well, the third one will definitely get him, and it goes over and over and over again, a self-perpetuating prophecy with a complete inability to let go of their partisan rage targeted towards Donald Trump. They just can't do it, folks. He's living rent-free in their minds. But even beyond that, check out this comment right over here, which got ratioed beyond belief. 193 comments to 47 likes as I'm recording this video. Sad day for democracy. Is this a democracy for lefties? A world where government agencies are used as a wing of the Democrat Party to go after their political opponents regardless of the crime. I mean, just think about it. I keep saying this, but I will keep putting emphasis on this. Democrats are the greatest abusers of power out there. They want to destroy everything that stands in their way of electoral victory. They actively encourage censorship, major corporations, and government going after their political opponents, like in January 6th, for instance, cheering on people who were just present being arrested and investigated by the FBI. They cheered on the Mueller probe, cheered on when Judge Sullivan refused to drop charges on Michael Flynn, and they actively encourage going after Donald Trump without a crime, without any provable, real evidence of a crime. They want to throw him in jail for the crime of being the evil orange man in their perception. It's absolutely backwards. It's despicable. And like everything with the Democrats, it goes from the top all the way down to the bottom, from the highest level of Democrat leadership all the way to the activist base on the bottom, the Twitter liberals. I mean, just take a look at this tweet right over here. Former President Obama, if we don't stop GOP voting efforts now, we're going to see a breakdown of the basic agreement that has held this magnificent Democrat experiment together all these years.
If we don't stop these kinds of efforts now, what we are going to see is more and more contested elections. Contested not in the sense of healthy competition, but contested in terms of who wins, who loses. We are going to see a further delegitimizing of our democracy. And not only are we going to see more unfairness in terms of results and who is represented and who isn't, but we are going to see a breakdown of the basic agreement that has held this magnificent democratic experiment together all these years.
You know what I read and what I hear when I say that? Give us what we want in terms of voting legislation, or we will destroy everything. And that's exactly what the Democrats have been hell-bent on doing in their efforts to stop Donald Trump and his voter base at all causes. They've said forever, all options are on the table, including the nuclear option. They are so petrified of another electoral landslide like in 2016 for President Donald Trump. They're so petrified of Donald Trump's 3 scoops becoming 4 or 5 scoops. They're so petrified of common sense voter regulation and losing the House in 2022 that they will go to whatever lengths they have to, meanwhile standing on the backs of minority voters in the country to use their plight in an effort to attain their political corrupt goals. And it's all just because they're scared of Donald Trump. It's all out of fear. And of course, the way that they convince their voter base that they're doing the right thing is once again through fear. Fear is the greatest enabler of power or power grabbing when it comes to any government out of control. The Democrats are out of control and are using fear-mongering tactics to expand their tentacles across Washington. But not so fast. We have a hero who may have been knocked down, but is seemingly emerging like a phoenix rising from the ashes, as Donald Trump is of course expected to run in 2024, but what if I told you he's now even eyeing a run in 2022 to become the Speaker of the House? Why do you think the Democrats are so petrified? Speaker Trump ? He will need to secure an absolute majority in the House. Trump would have to get 218 votes to secure the speakership. It's unclear if former President Trump will run for the Oval Office in 2024, but another issue is whether Mr. Trump may care to be Speaker of the House when the new Congress begins on January 3rd, 2023. Some of that conjecture started to churn again over the weekend when former president held a campaign-style rally in Wellington, Ohio. This all got stirred up recently when House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California, appeared to suggest during an interview on Fox that the former president wanted to be the Speaker should Republicans claim control of the House in 2022 midterms. McCarthy's aides immediately mopped this up. They said the former president wants McCarthy to preside as Speaker if the GOP flips the House next year. But whether or not Trump could emerge as the 55th Speaker of the House raises a very interesting question. Could it actually happen? There were suggestions that the former president may try to seek a seat of Congress representing Palm Beach, Florida, home to Mar-a-Lago. In an interview with Wayne Allen Root, Trump argued that becoming Speaker might be better. He described the possibility as very interesting. And just imagine Imagine, Democrats are seething now at another failed attempt to imprison President Donald Trump. Imagine if not only he's exonerated again and again, but then he becomes the Speaker of the House in 2022, replacing Nancy Pelosi and doing to the Democrats what the Democrats did to him, impeaching the cognitively impaired President Joe Biden. Folks, you can't write stories this interesting. And if this happens, of course it's a long shot, it's almost a meme. The idea is absolutely incredible, and if it did happen, we would be living in the greatest timeline ever conceived. Trump comes in 2022, BTFO's Nancy Pelosi, takes her seat, takes the House, takes the Senate, and then goes after Joe Biden for 2 years straight, doing to the Dems what the Dems did to him for 4 years. And then winning in 2024, yes, it's fantasy, but God, just the idea itself makes me so happy just thinking about it. Let a man dream. That's what I got for you though. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Never let a good crisis go to waste is the motto of the Democrat Party when it comes to taking crisis, when it comes to taking tragedy, which has absolutely nothing or near nothing to do with politics, the realm of politics, and making it political. Most people are apolitical. You guys watching this video right now who are keeping up with the news on a daily basis, keeping up with analysis from independent commentators and having discussion on political forums, etc., you're in the minority. Most people are just going about their regular life. And when an absolute tragedy happens, the last thing that they want to hear or see is pointing fingers in a partisan sense, right, left, back and forth, when it has absolutely no place whatsoever within the context of the tragedy. And here we go again, Democrats doing exactly what they do best. The tragedy that happened in Miami with the Surfside condo building just collapsing down to the ground. People are estimating 150 plus dead, or at least missing currently. It's still fresh, and Democrats are already standing on the graves of those individuals and making it political to attack Ron DeSantis. It's just so disgusting, and it goes to show exactly why the left is such fake news, because not only do they stand on the graves of individuals, but they smear and they attack based on false narratives that they seemingly just pull out of their behinds or fabricate with other co-conspirators known as anonymous sources to push ridiculous phony stories, not for the goal of doing the right thing, but rather for attacking their opponents politically that they deem are a threat. Why do you think these hit pieces keep coming out against Ron DeSantis? It's due to the fact that he's relevant, he's strong, he's been vindicated from every single smear piece and every single attack coming from the left, and he's the current successor to the GOP throne. And so Democrats are playing the dirty game that they always do, and let me show you guys what I mean, and then we'll get into some other examples. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so we got this headline right here from the Post Millennial. Fact check, Washington Post reporter falsely claims DeSantis was slow to respond to Surfside condo collapse. In the wake of the partial collapse of a Surfside, Florida condo building Thursday, establishment media has been quick to denounce Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' seemingly slow response. Documents reveal that the blame should not fall on his feet. The Washington Post, Hannah Dreyer, posted to Twitter a FEMA report on the incident which came out during the morning hours of Thursday. It states that at the time, no request for state or FEMA assistance had been made. FEMA was all ready to deploy to the condo collapse almost immediately and included the crisis in its daily briefing, but didn't get permission from Governor Ron DeSantis to get on the ground for a full day, she wrote. Let me show you her initial tweet. They're saying in emergency management, the first 24 hours are the only 24 hours. FEMA was ready to deploy to the condo collapse almost immediately and included the crisis in its daily briefing, but didn't get the permission from Governor Ron DeSantis to get on the ground for a full day. However, once again, a liberal latte journalist who sits in her cubicle all day, completely disconnected from how the world really works, got debunked almost immediately. In order for state or FEMA assistance to be requested, a chain of command has to be followed. A governor has to make the request for aid. According to documents posted by Twitter user Jeremy, an emergency declaration chain of command has to be started by the local government officials. Time to kill another conspiracy theory, how it works. Emergency declarations from local government, state government, federal government. The mayor did not sign an emergency order until 4:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The governor signed one less than an hour later at 5:32 p.m. So it turns out it wasn't Ron DeSantis. He was on the ball. Less than an hour after it was signed by the actual mayor, it got to his desk and he signed it immediately. You can see both documents right over here with the timestamps accordingly, 4:33 p.m., 5:32. And so once again, we have political hawks, Democrat activists, Democrat operatives, masquerading as journalists, just pushing out fake news, straight up lies, misinformation, disinformation, just to attack Ron DeSantis when they don't even know what they're talking about. It gets so bad in this specific case that the mayor of Miami-Dade, by the way, who happens to be a Democrat, even came out and debunked the narrative. Democrat mayor of Miami-Dade debunks the false narrative that Governor Ron DeSantis failed to grant FEMA responders access to the Surfside apartment disaster. Check this out.
Are you getting all the federal and state support you need?
We are very grateful. Not only the state of Florida has been here in force, but the president on the morning of the disaster called to offer all possible assistance. And by the end of that day, we had FEMA approval. So we're working super hard to get everything we need, and we've not lacked for any support, as well as support from around the world.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. But pretending as if I'm surprised, I just cannot do genuinely because I'm not. It's exactly what you would expect. The moment I saw this happen in Miami, literally my first immediate thought was, watch the Democrats blame this on Ron DeSantis. And of course they did. The discussion on Twitter was so absolutely despicable. Hashtag #DeathSantis, going after Ron DeSantis, talking about Florida, blaming capitalism, of course. But the fake news is just despicable. It's all so despicable. But of course, what's most despicable is just the fake news. It's no wonder CNN is treated like this when trying to interview senators outside the Capitol.
So you take the bike to work, huh?
Sometimes.
Congressman, is there any way we could get you to talk about January 6th?
I do not do interviews with CNN because I do not trust CNN to be honorable or truthful.
Well, can I ask you, do you still believe Antifa was behind January 6th?
I've already said what I'm going to say. I don't trust y'all to be truthful or honest.
Well, can you tell us if you regret what you said on January 6th?
I do not trust CNN to be truthful or honest, so I do no
Well, I'm just asking you
CNN.
questions. I'm asking you fair questions here, sir. Why can't you answer the question?
I do not trust y'all to be truthful or honest with anything CNN does.
It's on video. If you can just talk to us for a moment.
Oh, you guys will lie through your teeth any chance you get.
Well, give you the chance to come on if you don't mind.
I don't trust CNN to be honorable or truthful, he says, and I think most Americans don't. It's the constant lies, the constant smears based on absolutely no evidence whatsoever. Just earlier on CNN's show with Jim Acosta, the guy who was just rejected outside the Capitol for an interview, Maxine Waters says, "I'm told organizing for January 6th riot took place in the Trump campaign." What a ridiculous claim. And of course, Mr. Jim Acosta himself didn't even try to challenge the claim made. This is just what these networks do. We have this new book that CNN is now advertising that claims Trump told US general to just shoot racism, protesters book claims. Michael C. Bender wrote his book, Inside the Story of How Trump Lost, with these absolutely ridiculous claims based on, of course, you guessed it, anonymous sources close to the president leaking. And you go down Michael C. Bender's Twitter feed, and it's just him promoting his book, promoting people who are promoting the lies from his book, or what I think are lies personally, and probably the most egregious of all, he calls himself a journalist covering the White House, but his entire timeline all over Twitter is just anti-Trump propaganda with a book that is pushing anti-Trump propaganda, which then of course the cycle just fulfills itself, it feeds itself. Political hack at CNN, Jake Tapper, covering the book like this.
Exclusive now in our politics lead, a bombshell of a book that will be published July 13th, written by the Wall Street Journal's Michael Bender.
Bombshell, new book reveals these terrible claims that Donald Trump is the worst human being on the planet based on no fact, no evidence whatsoever, just like the baseless smear that the Washington Post attacked Ron DeSantis with. There's no such thing as journalism anymore, folks. They're political operatives, stooges for the Democrat establishment, propagandists, and of course, like I always say, the most dangerous force in Western civilization from a social or cultural point. Yet YouTube has the audacity to call them authoritative sources and to suppress little guys like me as they they promote the constant stream of fake news, lies, and smears that we see from these outlets. But that's what I got for you guys, and of course, if you want to help us as we go to battle each and every day against these phony narratives from these authoritative sources, within quotations of course, make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, and of course, share the video as much as possible. We are completely shadow banned from non-subscribed viewers. YouTube only sends the video out to people who are subscribed to the channel. And of course, make sure you have notifications enabled to be notified whenever I post a new piece, because even subscriptions don't really mean anything nowadays. So make sure you're subscribed, make sure you have notifications enabled. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Ho ho ho! Nancy Pelosi is shaking in her boots. Another massive, and I mean massive victory for the GOP headed into 2022. Most of these voter reform laws, you know, they gotta pass. They gotta pass quick if they're gonna be in place in time for the 2022 election. And so this is why the Democrats are freaking out right now, and attacks on the filibuster have mounted to extreme levels. We just covered the video of Biden's DOJ going after the state of Georgia for the literal crime of passing their own legislation on a state level. I mean, just think about how unconstitutional that really is, how deplorable it is. Talk about an abuse of power. But here's the thing, it's just an act of desperation. The Democrats are freaking out because every single key state to the 2022 election, and of course, beyond in the 2024 election, every single one of those states are passing key election reform bills that has the Democrats freaking out of what seems to be at this point the inevitable red wave, the red tsunami, about to overtake the country. The state of Pennsylvania, folks, 2 days after we covered that Arizona passed an election overhaul bill requiring signature verification. 2 days, and the state of Pennsylvania has now done the exact same thing, plus a little bit more. Common sense voter law and protecting the sanctity of democracy is exactly what it is. It's common sense. But of course, you know what it means for the Democrats. It means absolute sheer panic. So let me show you guys what I mean. Let me show you what happened in Pennsylvania. Then I want to highlight just how crazy the Democrats have become. And then let's get into a little bit of the Democrat desperation that seems to be boiling to the surface. Before we get into any of it though, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so the same guy I always get this news from, Tim Swain, at Swain for Senate, says breaking Pennsylvania Senate on a 29-21 vote. That's why it's absolutely so important that most of these state legislatures are majority Republican. Just passed hashtag HB 1300 requiring voter ID and signature verification for all ballots. Just read what it said, folks. Requiring voter ID and signature verification for all ballots. That's just common sense, right? Then why is it that the Democrats are acting like this? What is the problem? What's the problem with having rules to ensure that the thing is fair within the first place? What is the Democrats' issue with election integrity? Well, of course, I don't even have to get into it. You know exactly what it is. Let's take a look at what Tim Swain said further on. The Voting Rights Protection Act is a sweeping election integrity bill. The goal for the Pennsylvania GOP must be to repeal Act 77, which allowed for mass mail-in voting. However, this bill is a good start. Now on to the governor veto most likely coming. Follow me to keep updated. Now, Tim Swain warns of a potential veto. I don't think that would go too far. I think it'll eventually pass. I wouldn't worry about it too much, but he's right. The next step has to focus on mail-in ballots. There's no longer a state of emergency, and while requesting a mail-in ballot or an absentee ballot is fine, sending out unsolicited ballots is totally not fine, which is why, boom, here we go again, another massive win and more Democrat panic. Breaking Arizona House on a 31-29 vote just passed hashtag HB 2905 prohibiting election officials from mailing out unsolicited ballots. This is one of the 22 bills that Governor Ducey vetoed to urge the legislature to pass a budget. It was HB 2792. Now it's SB 1837 in the Senate and HB 2905 in the House. Big win for election integrity. Follow me to keep updated. And so Democrats are panicked as usual. And speaking of the Democrats being panicked, and I was just speaking about earlier how the DOJ is now being used as a political arm or political muscle to go after these states, and to ensure that election integrity bills that are passing common sense reforms don't get put through. Democrat voters, Democrat partisans, once again looking like absolute hypocrites as they claim that the DOJ and Bill Barr and Donald Trump were abusing the power of the federal government. Meanwhile, they're now saying things like this on Twitter in the comment section of the exact tweets I just showed you. DOJ is going to sue you, Pennsylvania. This Twitter user writes, and how are they going to verify signatures? I mean, by verifying the signature with the database and then making a phone call to make sure that the right individual cast a ballot? Sounds like another Jim Crow 2.0 voting law, so they can have a reason to nullify Democrat/brown people votes.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
He then goes on to say, we know, but I think he meant we now have an AG, an Attorney General, that will straighten out this racist fiasco. And so they view Attorney General Merrick Garland and the DOJ in a sense as a Democrat political enforcer rather than what's supposed to be a neutral element of government. They spent 4 years screeching like banshees about political corruption and abuse of power, trying to impeach the last president, and now they're all cheerleading for an overt corrupt act, an abuse of power from the DOJ. These people have lost the plot, folks. And in my personal opinion, this is so absolutely egregious for Merrick Garland that he should resign. He is clearly not qualified for the position that he is in, and thank the Lord he never made it to the Supreme Court, and instead we had the Three Scoops presidency of Mr. Donald J. Trump. And so what's the next step? Of course, Democrats in total desperation are clearly trying to do everything that they possibly can to subvert democracy. Of course, it's the attack on the filibuster. Chuck Schumer said a million times, all options are on the table, and they're already starting. The pressure to go after the filibuster has started. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says ditch the filibuster because Republicans can't claw back popular Democrat legislation. Check this out.
Democratic policies are popular, and once they are enacted, they are very politically difficult to undo. And so, I do not believe in the defeatism of saying we will lose in the future and this will automatically mean that anything we do now is going to be reversed, so we might as well not do anything now.
Once again, this ridiculous idea that we've debunked about a million times. The Democrat policies are just so popular, folks, that it justifies nuking the filibuster because it's just going to be nearly politically impossible to repeal such popular Democrat policy and legislation. So let's just pass it on a 51 majority and call it a day, folks. Who needs bipartisanship? Who needs the control from the filibuster to find moderate policy that appeals to all Americans? Democrats are just right about everything. But wait a second. Report, Black Latino voters reject radical leftist policies like defund the police, as well as many others as we've seen across local elections across the country in recent days. But I guess no one really warned AOC now, did they? Of course they have, she just doesn't listen. The Atlantic writes this story right over here. The Democrats are already losing the next election. She and some other Democrats blame their struggles on voter backlash to leftist ideas. In a caucus call, Spanberger complained that the slogan, defund the police, had been fodder for GOP attack ads, and Representative Connor Lamb of Pennsylvania argued in a New York Times interview that progressives had pushed ideas that were so unpopular in purple districts. New York Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez dismissed those criticisms, arguing that moderates had simply run weak campaigns. AOC's never ran a campaign in her entire life. In her district, there isn't even a Republican to run against. It's just which Democrat is appealing to the most naive element of Democrat policy within her district, and boom, that Democrat wins, which of course, no one will ever beat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at that game. She's never ran a competitive campaign against a Republican challenger in a purple district in her life. She's sabotaging her own party. They're all telling her to stop, but she refuses to concede even a little bit. And she claims that Democrat policy is just so popular, even though it's widely rejected across the country. And then she's using that argument to justify nuking the filibuster so Democrats can shove down whatever far-left policies they want down your throat with nearly no opposition whatsoever from the Republican Party. And then they complain about democracy and complain about common sense voter laws and are now using the DOJ to go after states who have a sovereign right to pass their own laws within their own chambers of Congress. And hopefully that paints the whole picture of just how despicable they truly are. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. There might be an extra member to add to the Hamas caucus or the squad in the House of Representatives. So far it's Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, Cori Bush was added this year, and now the next one is the first non-woman member of the cheerleading team, Mr. Jamal Bowman. What do the Democrats in the squad or the Hamas caucus all have in common, apart from their terrible policy ideas? Well, it's the fact that they're all massive hypocrites and they preach one thing but live another. How many times have we identified moments of rules for thee and not for me when involving the squad members? They talk a big game about social justice and policing the environment, but don't seem to live by it whatsoever. And here we go again, the biggest hypocrisy of all, as they continue to insult the people who are victims of violent crime across the country during this crime surge, as they are continuing to advocate for defunding the police. And trust me, if they could get away with it, they'd be saying abolish the police, as they continue to push this narrative that is harming so many people that they claim to represent. They're, of course, as expected, each and every single time the opportunity comes, calling for private security to protect them when it comes to their own livelihood, their sacred lives. Feeling threatened or just in general wanting safety, they need the highest level of security out there, those in the community that they pretend to be advocates for.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. You get nothing. You lose! Good day, sir!
And so let's once again get into the hypocrisy of the far left, the Twitter lefty squad. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so as crime surges across the country, as many experts are claiming it's going to be the most important topic of conversation when it comes to the 2022 midterms, the Democrat Party is trying to move as far away from AOC, the squad, and far lefty rhetoric in general when it comes to police officers or police departments. As we know, in New York City, they just elected a former police chief over AOC's preferred anti-police candidate, who, by the way, she actively campaigned for on the ground, but campaigned in vain as the American people, and more specifically minority communities, rejected the far-left Democrats and their calls to abandon and defund police departments in their communities. And so what has AOC and her far-left colleague, Jamal Bowman, gathered from this massive electoral loss as the American people, even in far-left New York, are rejecting their proposals and ideas? Well, just take a look at how callous they really are.
We are seeing these headlines about percentage increases. Now, I want to say that any amount of harm is unacceptable and too much. But I also want to make sure that this hysteria, that this doesn't drive a hysteria, and that we look at these numbers in context so that we can make responsible decisions about what to allocate in that context.
We gotta make sure that it doesn't drive hysteria. So essentially her messaging is, we gotta make sure that the rising levels in crime, the crime surge, doesn't drive a hysteria so we can continue our push to defund the police. It's absolutely despicable, folks. The same thing over and over again. We just made a video covering Ayanna Pressley doing the exact same thing. These far lefties cannot admit defeat. They cannot admit that they are wrong. The entire Democrat establishment is telling them, stop, you guys are crazy.
Stop it. Get some help.
They're at serious risk of losing the House as toss-ups. Seats are most likely going to go to whichever candidate is supporting the police or on the side that is appealing to that type of voter, aka the Republican side. Democrats are in total panic mode as electoral disaster seems to loom right around the corner in 2022, and the far-left Democrats are trying as hard as they can to continue to cling on to this narrative and try to twist it into a way where it's palatable. They're absolutely crazy. But of course, the hypocrisy just starts. This individual, Jamal Bowman, is the exact type of far-left hypocrite that you'd expect to join the squad. Democrat representative calls for defunding of white supremacist police, yet requested special police protection for his home. Jamal Bowman, Democrat from New York, a staunch supporter of the defund the police movement, asked for an increased police presence on the block where he lives in Yonkers. Bowman is a House rookie just finishing his first year in office, but he has wasted no time pushing the defund agenda. He opined the following in December 29th, 2020 in a tweet: "A system this cruel and inhumane can't be reformed. Defund the police, defund the system that's terrorizing our communities. We scream defund the police so we could reallocate those resources towards something that focuses on the true public health and safety. He also said police officers were agents of white supremacy. Apparently, in 2021, it was a different year for Representative Bowman. He was advised to talk to Yonkers police in order to get added patrol where he lived, and did so. U.S. Capitol Police advised us to reach out to local authorities to request heightened patrolling of his residence until the situation was mitigated. We followed their advice, stated Stara Idrisu, Bowman's chief of staff, also stating that death threats had been received, of course, the catch-all excuse for any Democrat whenever they're caught with their pants down. So there's some sort of perceived threat, which is honestly absolutely ridiculous at this point.
Here's your word. Here's your word. You were murdered. Okay,
This idea of the far-right fascist being an extreme domestic threat to politicians is a complete farce. But you know what's interesting? Lefties are going to argue, well, of course they called for added police considering what happened on January 6th. Oh, the horror. And you know what? Even though I think the whole narrative is bunk, I don't even blame ya. Sure, you want added police, you want to feel safe in your community, you think there's a risk, sure. But you can't do that when you're actively calling to defund the police, as regular folk who are living in the intercity communities face that type of potential crime and violence against their lives on a near daily basis. People caught up in the crossfire almost non-stop every single week, and your policies have now made it worse. You know what's more of a risk than being a far lefty Democrat who feels as though there's some sort of boogeyman perceived threat from Meemaw who visited the Capitol? People living in Southside Chicago. Yet your perspective is that you're so important and above it all, you deserve top-of-the-line protection, private protection from your local police to almost camp outside of your home and babysit you, but the people in the south side of Chicago don't deserve a thing? It's absolutely despicable, but it goes on, because of course, not just Mr. Bowman. Glenn Greenwald comes out exposing a whole lot of them. Just last month, AOC had the power to stop $2 billion in additional funds for Capitol Police that Pelosi wanted. All she had to do was vote no, like Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley with the GOP. Instead, she voted present to get more police protection for herself. You know what? My hat's off to Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, and Ayanna Pressley. At least they walk the walk. AOC, the loudest one in the room, gave the vote for Nancy Pelosi for increased protection against the horrible right-wing threat. Glenn Greenwald actually went on and absolutely blasted AOC. AOC is mocking ordinary people as hysterical who are afraid of violent crime in their neighborhood. People who, unlike her, don't have reams of private security. Yet she just acted to ensure $2 billion more in spending on the police that protects her. Absolute scoundrel like AOC. I also really get upset when people are hysterical about fears of violent crime and then he links her tweet on the 28th of January that's been so widely ridiculed. I am happy to work with Republicans on the issue where there's common ground, but you almost had me murdered 3 weeks ago, so you can sit this one out.
Here's your word. Here's your word. You were murdered. Okay,
Happy to work with almost any other GOP that aren't trying to get me killed.
Here's your word. Here's your word. You were murdered. Okay,
In the meantime, if you want to help, you can resign. I mean, talk about hysteria. Regular folk, once again, who just want to live in peaceful communities, who want police officers there because they fear the actual gangs and the gang violence in their neighborhoods more so than police officers who are trying to do something about it. Those people who, by the way, once again in Democrat New York, in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's backyard of Democrat New York, voted for Eric Adams, a former police chief. Those people are just being hysterical. AOC, however, has never pushed hysteria within the realm of politics whatsoever. Of course not. Give me a break. She still continues to push this idea of the January 6th insurrection being the greatest threat to human life. But that was one little flash that really should have never happened. It's been blown out of proportion. And meanwhile, her and the current Democrat White House, as they're pushing this idea of white supremacy and white supremacist violence taking over the country, man suspected of shooting Daytona Beach officer captured at black nationalist encampment with arsenal of weapons. It seems as though there's a radicalism that's born out of left-wing politics that nobody wants to talk about. It's the elephant in the room. It's so obvious, it's as clear as day, and AOC is one of the biggest enablers of it as she continues to push her anti-Republican, anti-police rhetoric along with her squad members that's leading to actual loss of life. The loss of life they pretend happened on January 6th, when we know Brian Sicknick, the officer, the Capitol Hill police officer, died the next day of a stroke, and the 4 others who lost their lives are actually Trump supporters who had heart attacks or other things happen to them, like Ashley Babbitt being shot on sight, as we so tragically saw. Oh, and by the way, we should probably finish the video with this one. As AOC is talking about the hysteria, remember the crime that I showed you guys a couple days ago of a New York man running up on another young individual around 24, 25 years old, entangled with two very young children, just brazenly shooting shots with complete disregard for the lives of those two individual children? Well, this is what's happening in the Bronx. This is what's happening in AOC's backyard, and she just doesn't seem to give a hoot about it. Talking about hysteria, well, the man who narrowly missed shooting two young girls in the Bronx had a long history of violent crime. His name is Michael Lopez, a 27-year-old, and he has officially been arrested. And as AOC takes his side, well, you know what? This sweet, lovable guy, he must have just